Coming up next on Sbu TV News, New York Governor Eliot Spitzer announces his resignation, university security guards are caught on camera doing a little more harm than good, and contract negotiations begin at Olean's Dresser Rand plant. Welcome to this edition of Sbu TV News. I'm Jean Taylor.
And I'm Caroline Bayard. St. Bonaventure University campus security enforces harsh punishment on students for acts of vandalism, but now the tables have turned. Vanessa Diaz explains.
You would expect everything to be quiet at 2 a.m. on St. Bonaventure University's campus, but one student was awake and startled to see the commotion going on in front of her townhouse.
I noticed there was the gold Chrysler minivans that they have security van stuck in the snow. Then we realized he's actually stuck against the bike rack, and he's trying to back up over it or against it or whatever he's doing. I don't know how, but he was stuck against the bike rack, and he just kept slamming back into it over and over and over again, like pulling forward and backward and forward and backward, trying to get himself unstuck. The bike rack has long since fallen over, and it's like every time he like rams into it, it like tilts up and it's ready to, I don't know, it just kept tilting up, and their bikes had fallen over, and eventually after about 10 minutes of doing that, he got himself unstuck, pulled forward, got himself out of it, and just drove away.
Macaulay then went outside and began taking pictures of the damage.
Once I got down outside, I realized he had run over a bike, at least half of it. The tire was all pushed down into the snow, the front tire of this bike, and you could see where the tire marks had gone right over it.
She thought that the security guard had just left the damage, but
I go back upstairs to my apartment, and I look back out the window to see if he's going to stop and do anything about it, and he stops, and he gets out, and I'm thinking, okay, he's going to come, and he's going to like fix it and put the bike rack back together. But instead, I couldn't believe my eyes. He started covering it up. He started walking up and down the stuff where he like looks around, see if anyone's around. And then he starts like, he's got his hands in his pocket, and he's just nonchalantly like kicking snow over all the tire marks that he's made. Goes right over to where the bike rack was and just piles snow into his tire marks. Practically, buries that bike that he had messed up and just covers the whole thing with snow. And I was taking pictures of him doing that. I took pictures of him covering it up.
After the security guard left, Macaulay once again thought that the ordeal was over. But again, she was wrong.
And I see the security guard continuing. He had come back. He left and then came back, and now he's continuing to cover it up and push snow over the tire marks.
This is what it looked like before and after the cover-up took place. After the whole thing was over, what was her reaction?
A lot of anger. Security and the university in general always makes such a big deal when there's vandalism to bikes or whatever it is like that gets destroyed. And yet here's an employee of the university doing that same thing and not taking any responsibility for it.
This is what it looks like in the daylight. It is evident that the bikes and bike rack are still exactly the way the security guard left them, damaged. When asked for a comment, a St. Bonaventure Security Services spokesperson said that the eyewitness must file an incident report before they can comment. That incident report was filed, but yet still no response from the university. For Sbu TV, I'm Vanessa Diaz. As Interim Director of Student Life, which also oversees security services, Dr. Roger Keener says that upon review of the evidence, an investigation will begin.
The Vietnam War tore apart American society 40 years ago when the trial of protesters, now known as the Chicago 10, was front-page news, and when an anti-war rally at Kent State University turned deadly. Claire Glatz found out the draft law that applied to millions is nearly forgotten.
This generation is going to take this country back by any means necessary.
By Vietnam, had problems, deaths, and like Kent State. You had kids burning draft cards. You had kids leaving the country, going to Canada. just to avoid the draft. I mean, it was a bad thing because people said it's a police action. We don't need to be there. Get our kids home.
From 1948 until 1973, men were drafted into the armed forces. Sampson remembers the draft during Vietnam.
If you could walk and chew gum, you were in.
Sampson was sent to Vietnam not a week after his high school graduation.
Thought it was my obligation. My dad was a World War II vet. I was looking more for the opportunities to get the hell away from a small town environment and, like I say, 18 and cocky and let's go take on the world.
In 1973, the draft ended and the military became all volunteer. By law, any male U.S. citizen and any male alien living in the U.S. ages 18 to 25 still has to register for the Selective Service. It can be done at any post office, like here in Allegheny, but the attitude towards this has changed. Do you know if you registered for the Selective Service?
Selective Service?
Do you know what the draft board or the Selective Service is?
Nope.
Do you know what the Selective Service or the draft board is?
Draft board? No, I do not.
Do you know what the Selective Service or the draft board is?
I'm not exactly sure, no.
One student knew what I was talking about. Do you know what the draft board?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I registered for that. Yeah.
The Selective Service system has been in place since 1940 and clearly doesn't cause the stir it used to.
It's mandatory to sign up, but that's it. There's nobody serving now because they were drafted. It's an all-volunteer service. And once that started, then the idea of the draft or the use of it or the reason for it is just slowly being pushed to the back.
Although the draft isn't active now,
People started talking pretty heavily about the draft again after September 11th, 2001.
For Sbu Tv, I'm Claire Glatz.
To know if Sampson, who has been a draft board member for 19 years, thinks the draft will come back? In a couple of weeks, Sbu TV will air the answer. In addition to the post office, young men can register for Selective Service online in most high schools or by mail.
New York Governor Eliot Spitzer announced his plan to resign on Wednesday in light of a developing scandal involving a high-priced prostitution ring. CNN's Sandra Endo has the story.
The New York Times is reporting that the woman at the heart of the Eliot Spitzer prostitution scandal is a 22-year-old from New Jersey, identified in court documents as Kristen. On Wednesday, Spitzer stepped down from the office he once won in a landslide.
To every New Yorker and to all those who believed in what I tried to stand for, I sincerely apologize.
According to the New York Times, the real name of the woman at the center of the scandal is Ashley Alexandra Dupre. Her MySpace page describes her love for music and says she comes from a broken family. The young woman has not been charged with any crime. Defending his sister, Dupre's brother says she's a good person.
Just hectic and can't really comment on it. I'm sticking by my sister through everything and she's going to be fine.
Spitzer is still under investigation but has not been charged with any crime. Meanwhile, the U.S. Attorney says no deal has been made with Spitzer regarding the case. Sources familiar with the investigation say federal agents put Spitzer under surveillance twice this year and determined he used a high-priced call girl ring at least 8 times in recent months. New York officials say it's now time to move forward.
Eliot Spitzer was a hard-charging guy. I'm sure he would say to himself, to make an omelet, you have to break some eggs. But that doesn't take away from the tragic nature of this.
Lieutenant Governor David Paterson will be sworn in as governor on Monday. He could serve out the rest of Spitzer's term through 2010. In Washington, I'm Sandra Endo.
Lieutenant Governor David Paterson would be New York State's first black governor and the 4th black state governor in the country.
Sbu TV continues to follow the developing story regarding contract negotiations between Dresser Rand and the 2 unions in the Southern Tier. Late last month, we reported members of Local 313 IUE-CWA were frustrated because they failed to come to contract terms with Dresser Rand. Union President Steve Coates warned employees in Olean would be next when their contract expires in June. Dresser Rand officials declined to be interviewed on camera, but the Buffalo News spoke with company CEO Vince Volpe. Said workers in Olean were more cooperative than those in Painted Post. The folks there have not been resistant to change, as long as we've been able to convince them it makes sense. According to Coates, contract negotiations in Olean began early this week. John Baglione, president of the Steelworkers Union Local 4601, which represents the Olean employees, declined to comment. Coming up next on Sbu TV News, a closer look at Irish step dancing and some of the reasons behind rising oil prices.
So you think you'd be able to start in 2 weeks?
Absolutely.
Very impressive, Mr. Gonzalez. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. It was nice meeting you both. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thought he was pretty good.
I think we've got enough color around here. 2 points. And who's next?
You dropped this.
Imagine the power of one voice. Find yours at freedomcenter.org.
The Olean City School District must begin to search for a new school superintendent. Mark Ward announced his decision to resign as superintendent on Friday, March 7th. Ward has been superintendent for Olean schools since August 2004. He plans to become superintendent of the Ellicottville School District, where his hometown of Great Valley is. Ward's resignation will go into effect at the end of June. 2 whales stranded on an Australian beach were saved by an unusual hero, a dolphin named Moko. One News' Adrian Stevenon has the story.
It's here at Mahia Beach, Department of Conservation worker Malcolm Smith came to rescue a female whale and her calf, fighting for their lives.
They became more distressed as time wore on.
Mahia is a hotspot for beached whales, up to 30 strandings a year. This time it was pygmy sperm whales, similar to this. Malcolm had been trying to refloat the whales for an hour and a half. The time had come to reach for his gun.
I was about to give up, and usually when that happens the whales will stay on the beach and we have to take the distress away from the situation. And
when all hope was lost, out of nowhere appeared Moko, a friendly dolphin who's made her home at Mahia over the last 12 months.
She came directly to where we were and established contact, and immediately those 2 whales seemed to relax.
Within minutes, Moko had acquainted herself with the whales and led them to safety.
She did in a few minutes what we had actually been totally ineffective at doing over an hour and a half.
The day's event's a first for Malcolm, who's been on the job for over 30 years.
This is the first recorded instance of something like this happening.
As for the hero, she was back soon after to play with local residents, all in a day's work for Moko the Dolphin. Adrian Stevenon, One News.
Bagpipes, green beer, and corned beef dinners. St. Patrick's Day just wouldn't be the same without these traditions, and the same goes for Irish step dancing. I spoke to some dancers about the one day a year they get to shine. It's that magical time of the year again when everyone everywhere gets to celebrate being Irish. But for young Irish step dancers, the traditions of St. Patrick's Day are more of a lifestyle than a reason to party.
I started Irish step dancing when I was 7, and I started with my sister who was a year younger.
Instead of like playing sports or, whatever little girls would get into, they would Irish dance.
Irish eyes might be smiling everywhere on St. Paddy's Day, but after practicing year-round, small Irish feet are happiest once parade day arrives.
I performed in the parade since I started dancing when I was 6.
St. Patrick's Day parade is like the thing that it all leads up to. Like all week you'll have shows, but then that's like the main event. You'd have to get up at like 6 a.m. and then dance all day. You would be getting pulled out of school to like do shows.
Between 7 and 9 shows a day, all day long.
There was a lot of pressure and it was hard, but I just I loved it. I didn't really mind.
Irish step dancing is a tradition forgotten by most people on any day that isn't March 17th. But this wonderful pastime lives on throughout the years thanks to dedicated dancers, young and old.
Not that many people Irish dance, so I really liked it and I liked learning about my culture.
I remember it being like a huge part of my childhood. St. Patrick's Day for us would start like a month before, March even hit.
To celebrate this St. Patrick's Day, I decided to channel my Irish roots and attempt some steps in the hard shoes.
I'm going to teach you the Irish jig.
Okay, ready? Step number 1. Jump. Kick. Back, 2, 3, 4.
For Sbu TV, I'm Bayard.
Oh, it's probably going to take a few years of practice, or maybe just a pint of Guinness before St. Paddy's Day when I dance the jig.
The fact that the price of oil is surging to over $108 a barrel, while the value of the dollar itself falls, is not a coincidence. CNN's Wilf Dinnick takes a closer look at the forces at work.
Boom times have never been like this. Here in Abu Dhabi, the world's 4th largest oil producer, revenues are spilling over.
Countries like United Arab Emirates, the small population, they don't have enough really the room to absorb, Qatar and so on. So obviously for them, outside investment is the best.
At $100 a barrel, it is estimated Gulf countries have close to $200 billion a year to invest. And they are investing. Abu Dhabi owns almost 5% of America's largest bank. And a chunk of America's largest home builders, the Toll Brothers. Neighboring Dubai is vying for 20% of the Nasdaq exchange. And no signs oil prices are coming down.
One reason for all of this is the falling U.S. dollar. Oil that's traded in U.S. dollars is now more attractive to all those foreign investors.
That's because they can buy more of it with their stronger currencies. That's creating demand and pushing up prices. But many of these Gulf investment funds keep a very low profile, rarely talking to the media. The U.S. Congress is starting to ask questions.
A lot of people get very concerned whether this is just a profit-making investment or if there's a political agenda behind it. So rather than say the wrong thing, they would rather just keep a low profile.
But that may be hard, with the Gulf countries looking to spend hundreds of billions of dollars and record oil prices that could keep climbing. Wilf Dinnick, CNN, Dubai.
With fewer people attending church and confession, the Vatican reminded Catholics of sinful behavior. The Vatican has added a modern twist to the original 7 deadly sins. In an interview with the Vatican's official newspaper, L'Osservatore Romano, the head of the Vatican body which oversees confessions and plenary indulgences, Bishop Gianfranco Girotti, encouraged people to be mindful of sinful actions such as bioethical violations such as birth control, morally dubious experiments such as stem cell research, drug abuse, polluting the environment, contributing to widening divide between rich and poor, excessive wealth, and creating poverty. The Vatican is trying to draw attention to new forms of social sins in this age of globalization, he said. According to a Vatican survey, 60% of Catholics in Italy no longer go to confession. The 7 deadly sins established in the 6th century by Pope Gregory the Great include lust, gluttony, avarice, sloth, anger, envy, and pride. Sins in the past were thought of as being an individual matter. Girotti emphasized the social resonance of sin. The sins the bishop spoke about are not considered new deadly sins, as the media has recently reported. The bishop was merely making comments on the pervasiveness of sin and its social context in today's world.
A flu outbreak in Hong Kong has many parents worrying how it's being handled. 5 years ago, SARS killed 300 people in Hong Kong. CNN's Christy Lustat has the story.
One family's personal tragedy, and it has many parents in Hong Kong running scared. Last weekend, 7-year-old La Homing was admitted to the hospital with mysterious flu-like symptoms. He died on Tuesday. Officials say 5 of his classmates are sick, hospitalized, and 30 others are displaying similar flu-like symptoms. Their school has been shut down early for Easter break and is undergoing disinfection. 25 schools, including this one, are reporting outbreaks of flu, and the children are well versed in how to battle the bug, wearing face masks and regularly washing their hands. Hong Kong has been through a similar situation before, but on a far different scale. Only 5 years ago, Hong Kong was hit by SARS. Almost 300 people died. The government has ordered an investigation into whether the cases are related to SARS or bird flu. They're urging parents to remain calm as they try to identify the illness. One infectious disease specialist, who isn't involved in the investigation, offered his opinion.
There is nothing new. We are still experiencing the type B flu.
Dr. Lowe offers flu shots, which give patients some protection, but it will take more than a shot in the arm to calm Hong Kong's anxious parents. As he picks up his 8-year-old daughter from school, Mr. Leung says, "I'm very worried. They don't know how the virus is making the children so sick. There's no medication to stop it, and they can't stop the disease from spreading. As a parent, I'm very worried." These kids are too young to remember SARS, but their parents do. As health experts search for answers, it doesn't take much to bring the fear of another outbreak back to the surface. Christy Lou Stout, CNN, Hong Kong.
The Olean Huskies prepare for the state semifinals, and the SBU women's lacrosse team looks for its first win of the season.
Mrs. Abruzzo, I'm here with the Neighborhood Watch.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, no. I'm signing up for the Neighborhood Watch.
You made our dreams come true. You have your cameras here? Where are you going, Mr. McMahon?
I'm going to check with the lady next door. Yeah,
Help play a part in the safety of your community. To find out how you can start or join a Neighborhood Watch, log on to usaonwatch.org.
Not even close. See, all colors have wavelengths that are diffused by oxygen and nitrogen. Since blue is the shortest wavelength, it's diffused up to 10 times more.
Who taught you that?
Mommy?
By age 12, too many girls lose interest in math and science and their chance of future jobs. Keep her interest alive.
You know why mathematics is the basis of life as we know it?
You tell me.
It's her future. Do the math.
Welcome back to Sbu TV. Amanda Fuller joins us with sports.
Thanks, Caroline. For the second straight year, the Olean High School varsity basketball team will make its way to the New York State Final Four.
Section 5 champion Charlotte on March 9th to earn the trip to Glen Falls. Olean will play Section 4 champion Shenango Valley on March 14th at 6:45 p.m. Olean held practice Wednesday after school and left around noon on Thursday. They were scheduled to practice at 8 p.m. in Glen Falls.
After losing in the semifinals last season, head coach Jeff Anastasia warned his players not to look past Shenango Valley this season. The Atlantic 10 posted its men's basketball awards on March 10th.
Temple's Deontay Christmas, Will Daniels of Rhode Island, UMass's Gary Forbes, and Dayton's Brian Roberts. Forbes took Player of the Year, while Richmond's Kevin Anderson won Rookie of the Year.
Of the 14 schools in the Atlantic 10 Conference, not one St. Bonaventure player made it on the list, while all other 13 schools were represented. For a complete list of the awards, visit www.atlantic10.com. With winter almost over, spring sports are beginning to get into swing. Michael Postles took a closer look at the St. Bonaventure men's club lacrosse team and the Division I girls team.
It's almost if you were to combine the hitting of hockey and the speed of soccer. It's an extremely fast-paced game. It's hard-hitting, it's extremely physical, but it's so much fun. With kids shooting, anywhere from 70 to, 95 miles an hour.
As a club team, it faces many difficulties.
The biggest problem we faced is that, until you have games scheduled, it's hard to get people motivated to want to practice.
The club lacrosse team at St. Bonaventure is comprised of 20 students. They'll begin practicing after Easter break, while the women's Division I team has been practicing for 20 hours every week since mid-January.
You're using a stick, you have a small ball, and you're trying to get the ball on the goal. It's a lot different than men's lacrosse. There's a lot of different rules, so sometimes people don't even consider them the same sport because a lot of the equipment's different. We have goggles. Our sticks are very different. You're not allowed to have any pocket at all, basically. In a girl's stick, the ball has to be showing above the sidewall. But in a guy's stick, it can be really low. Men's shafts are either shorter or a lot longer than girls' shafts. The fields are also different. Girls' fields are a lot longer, and they have completely different lines than guys' lacrosse do. The way we start with a draw. They start with something in the middle. So it's just very different overall. I think it's fast-paced when you're playing it, but compared to men's lacrosse is a lot more exciting to watch. I personally like watching men's lacrosse a lot better than I like watching women's lacrosse.
This Division I team also faces many difficulties.
It's really hard. Any athlete will know that it's really hard to balance schoolwork with when you're traveling, especially.
For Sbu TV, I'm Michael Postles.
The women will compete on the road for the next 3 games, and the men will compete for the first time in Fredonia on the weekend of April 13th. The women's lacrosse team traveled to Buffalo to face the Canisius Golden Griffins. The team was still going after the elusive first win of the season. For the first 10 minutes, the Bonnies traded goals with the Golden Griffins until 2 consecutive scores by Canisius put them up 5-3. Brenna Houghton scored her second goal of the game to put the Bonnies within 1. Shortly afterwards, Carrie Vito put one in to knot the game at 5. Canisius came back to be up 7-6 at halftime. Bonaventure tied the game 2 minutes into the second half, and then 12 seconds later took the lead with Brenna Houghton's 4th goal of the game. Canisius would not back down. 2 consecutive goals by Canisius freshman Taylor Gray put the Griffins up 10-9 with 8 minutes remaining. Senior captain Kimberly Ross tied the game late in the second half, and then with 2 minutes left in the game, she was slashed in the face, prompting a free position shot. Senior Megan Murphy coolly put the ball in the back of the net, and the Bonnies got their first win of the season, 11-10. The women will be playing their upcoming home games Friday against Siena and Sunday against Albany at Merrill Field at Alfred University. Bonaventure's natural home field is not set to play on due to weather. In NHL action, after losing all 4 meetings versus the New York Rangers this season, the Buffalo Sabres tried to avoid the same fate when they faced off against Pittsburgh. Penguins' Sidney Crosby missed the game with soreness in his injured right ankle. Early in the first, after a face-off win, Sabres defenseman Nolan Pratt gave the puck away, allowing Pittsburgh's Tyler Kennedy to skate in on the breakaway and score to give the Penguins a 1-0 lead. In the second, Buffalo's Nathan Pache was elbowed by Pittsburgh's George Laraque. Laraque was given a 5-minute major and a game misconduct for the hit. Pache suffered a concussion and will be out indefinitely. The Penguins increased their lead after Jeff Tapp deflected the puck home to make it 2-0 Pittsburgh. A power play goal by Sergei Gonchar made the score 3-0 entering the third. The Penguins converted on another power play to go up by 4 on a goal from Peter Sikora. Buffalo tried to get back in the game as Jochen Hecht backhanded a rebound into the net to get the Sabres on the scoreboard. Then 2 minutes later, with Buffalo shorthanded again, Daniel Pye found open ice and blasted a shot past Ty Conklin to cut the Penguins' lead to 4-2. However, Pittsburgh's Evgeny Malkin responded by deflecting in his 39th goal of the year on a power play. A minute later, Chris Minard one-timed a shot past Sabres goalie Ryan Miller to restore the Penguins' 4-goal lead. Pittsburgh would go on to the 7-3 win over Buffalo to move into first place in the Eastern Conference.
We were tentative, we were tight, we weren't able to play our game. I think part of that is there's a lot of new pieces in different places.
Buffalo will continue its chase for a playoff spot with games against Carolina, Toronto, and Tampa Bay. That's all for sports. I'm Amanda Fuller.
That's all for this edition of Sbu TV. I'm Jean Taylor.
And I'm Caroline Bayard. For all of us here at Sbu TV, have a great week.